Anytime you're
When
ready.
you're ready. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, let's do it. Welcome to I'm going to start that again. Welcome to Homemaker Chic Podcast. We're rescuing the art of homemaking from the daily grind every Monday with you for about 4 years now, 21 seasons, and a topic that we've sort of skirted around from a layman's perspective, if you will, is our health. And today we're so pleased for the fourth time we're having Christy Richmond on. She is a functional nurse consultant that has helped both Shay and I in tremendous ways with our own health. If you haven't listened to the previous episodes, you really should. But today's going to be another doozy. And we're doing this because as we're rescuing this art of homemaking, we want to be as healthy and clear-minded as we can. I think there's a lot of things that we assume are normal, from, really over-the-top monthly symptoms to brain fog and, gut issues. And I think we've just assumed that so much negativity in our bodies is normal, migraines, whatever, as women, and they're not. And so I'm so pleased to welcome you, Christy, to the show. Of course, Shay Elliott, my co-host, is here. We're going to have a great time and another fascinating discussion about what lies beneath.
I think what lies beneath.
That's what I titled last week's episode.
That's so good. I think this is Christy's third time, and that's important because her and Jen might be duking it out for most featured guest.
My bad. I thought we had her on once last season. Nope, you're right. Third time. Okay.
Yep. Just keeping the tallies straight here.
Excellent.
We're above ground on all things.
Okay.
Above, that's not what the saying is. What is it? Above?
I have no idea. I just said what lies beneath, and now all of a sudden we're above ground. So
I can't think of it. Anyway, carry on.
Hi, Christy.
Hey, ladies. Good morning. Thank you for having me on again.
Absolutely. Shay, let's talk about who's sponsoring this episode.
All right.
Okay.
All right. I'm not drinking them right now, but as always, when I do enjoy a glass of wine, which is Christy approved, by the way. I think
BTW.
that's very, very important because initially I was like, you know what? I just won't drink any of these things. And then I was drinking Dry Farms anyway. And I called Christy, or I texted her, and I was like, I'm swallowing my supplements with my wine. I'm so sorry I've let you down.
Not at all. Not at all.
That's like, I asked Shay once, I'm like, do you ever drink a glass of wine while you're working out? She's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, good.
But it is sponsored by Dry Farm Wines, our beloved Dry Farm Wines, the sourdough of the wine world, a wine company that you can feel so good about drinking. And that's just the thing. When you look at a wine label and the ingredients say grapes, that's it. You guys, no yeasts, no sugars, no preservatives, no chemicals, no clarifiers. I know you don't think there's a lot of things in your wine. You might be thinking that your wine ingredients are just grapes. I assure you that they are not. Because in order to find these wines where they're not messed with in any way, Dry Farms actually has to do a lot of work. They go out and they find these wineries who are making wine like this, who meet their standards for organic, for biodynamic, for non-irrigated, for no additives, for low alcohol, low sugar. That just means it's naturally fermented, kind of as nature intended it. It's just not messed with. And you can give them a try by visiting dryfarmwines.com/homemaker chic. You get an extra bottle for just a penny when you use that link. So if you order 3, you get 4, you order 6, you get 7, etc. And I really do encourage you to try it. I just got another friend on Dry Farm's deck. They shipped him his box and he gave it a try and he was like, oh, okay. I
get
see.
it. Mm-hmm.
I get it. I'm like, look, this has happened many times before. People
Told ya.
hold out, but I told you so.
Right. Hate to say it.
So you can visit dryfarmwines.com/homemaker chic, or just hit the link below the video, or hit the link over on our Instagram. Shop around. You can do reds, whites, bubblies, all those wonderful things. All Christy approved. So
Absolutely.
there you go.
So I think last week we left off and we started talking about the different bacteria. And I think it got really exciting in a nerd kind of way. And I can't remember. Were we going to transition to like talking about bad bacteria? Or do you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk
Okay.
about the bad bacteria too, because when you get a GI map, there's some scary things on there. E. coli, staph, parasites.
Yeah.
Like, are these things you actually see a lot in these GI maps, Christy?
They are. Yeah, they really are. Everybody's definitely presenting a little bit different, but we do look for, I mean, I haven't counted them up, but I would say probably over 60 or 70 different bacteria, parasites, yeast, overgrowth of fungus. We look for basically anything that's in the gut that is not supposed to be there and is potentially causing problems or wreaking havoc in the gut.
Really quick, just in case somebody's like, this is their first time. Should we
Sure.
just spend 3 minutes? Like, what is a GI map and why does
Yeah.
someone do it? Really quick
Mhm.
as a refresher. But then definitely go back and listen to the other episodes with
Mhm.
Christy. And
But
in the
I'll-
show notes, I will link directly to those older episodes too. So
And we also didn't talk about how you take a GI map. I alluded to it.
you alluded to. We don't want to
People
scare
wanna
people
know.
away. Do they want to know?
Listen,
I
yeah,
can
of
let you
course
guys
they want to
explain.
know. Go, Christy, go. Take it.
I can let you guys explain the process of actually taking one if you would like to. No, it's so in functional medicine, we look at the root cause. We look for the root cause of whatever symptoms the patient is having. And we don't just look at this pile of symptoms and try to just manage the symptoms. We really dig as deep as we possibly can to find the very core problem. And then we correct it from the inside versus working externally and moving in. We work internally first and we move basically the opposite way that a lot of medicine is practiced today. We use diagnostic tools like the GI map. I like to call them root cause diagnostic tools because they literally are revealing the very root cause of whatever inflammation or disease that we're dealing with here. I call them root cause diagnostic tests. And we use specific ones. The GI map is my favorite. If you want to talk about nerding out, like come sit with me when I go over somebody's GI map. I am just like, I'm smiling as I'm looking at it because I'm like, oh, I know why you feel the way that you do. Like I can look at this and it's literally a map. I love that they call it a map because it gives us direction and it gives us a path forward to someone it basically gives me, I'm able to connect the very root cause of what we find, whether it's bacterial overgrowth, leaky gut, yeast, parasites, whatever it is. I can literally draw a line and a path from those overgrowths or whatever's the issue to the person's symptoms and to their types of inflammation. So it's giving us that roadmap and just a really good deep picture of what's going on in there. So the GI map is a stool test that we do that is just a super easy collection of just a normal bowel movement. And you will package that up and send it back. The instructions are perfectly laid out, very easy to do. And we're looking at
Also gross, though. Also gross.
But
Also
like
gross.
just to, if people's imaginations are like, what? Like we're
Yeah.
talking about like a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a super small amount. You're not
Just saying.
packaging it up in a Tupperware here and sending it
right,
off.
right. No,
But
you're
also,
not sending this big pile of
no,
pieces
I was
of
like,
it.
this isn't going to be great. I mean, come on, this is good. We can do this. And then I was doing it. I was like, not a nurse. Definitely not a nurse.
Don't drop it.
No.
Just like,
It is really different. It is. I mean, because typically some people don't even look in the toilet after they go.
Yeah.
They just flush it. They don't even look, like I don't want to see that. I'm still having a hard time getting my husband to commit to one.
Oh,
He's
man.
like, I'm not going to poop in a box. And it's like, okay, it's not quite that bad.
it's not a
You just
box.
do
It's
it
like a
and-
carnival hot dog container.
It's like a hot dog container. It wasn't that bothered me. It was the temperature. Sorry,
It's so warm.
It's so warm.
Oh my God.
I was like, it's hot. Yuck. Okay, but we're adults here on this podcast, so we
Oh
can
my
get
gosh.
over it.
Are you sure?
I don't like to work out. Okay, I don't like it. And my friend Amber always says, she's like, newbies need motivation, veterans grind. And I think about that sometimes with health stuff. I'm like, freaking grind. Okay, I'm sorry you don't want to. You don't like the taste of that powder Christy has you drinking. Okay, swallow it. Come on.
Right.
What's your problem? It's time to
I love
grind.
that.
Mm.
I love that. Let's do t-shirts. Homemaker chic shirts that say that. That's perfect. No, I mean, you're exactly right though. And that's a whole nother like topic of adjusting habits and adjusting behaviors and things to be able to walk toward wellness. But the GI map is in fact a stool test. It gives us a really great picture as to what's going on in the gut, all the way from the stomach and then all the way 22 feet to the very end of the GI tract where we collect the specimen. So we're looking for any kind of bacteria, yeast, parasite, anything honestly that is in the gut that's not supposed to be there, that's causing inflammation and causing disease for the person. So we're looking for specific things like H. pylori, which happens in the upper GI, in the stomach. And H. pylori happens to be one of the most destructive, I think, in my opinion, is one of the most destructive bacteria that there is, because it alters the stomach acid and it causes basically the perfect environment for overgrowth in the small intestine, which leads to SIBO and leaky gut and autoimmune disease and all of those things. So
Even
I have that?
heartburn, right?
Did I have that?
Heartburn.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I
don't
don't know.
remember.
So
know
if you have H. pylori and it's lowering your stomach acid,
Mhm.
and then what do you get prescribed from your average doctor? Is
Oh, yeah,
a
you're on
medication
something.
that
You're on
lowers your stomach acid.
exactly.
So you're actually making the problem exponentially worse.
Yes, that is exactly right. And 60% or so, the research says 60% of people have H. pylori, and they may not know it. Some people are symptomatic, some people are asymptomatic, but it's exactly right. The typical treatment for, someone goes in, and this was me like 12 years ago, went into my GI doc and I'm like, hey, I'm having acid reflux out of this world. And they were like, oh, well, we could do an upper GI or we could do this or that, but why don't we start you on Prilosec or Protonix or omeprazole? Those are all proton pump inhibitors is what they're called. That's their first line of treatment. And they alter the stomach acid to be less acidic. So it stops causing, esophageal symptoms and erosion, stuff like that. But when you have H. pylori on board, and they do test for H. pylori when they do an upper GI. I had mine done back in it was probably 2013. They did take a biopsy for H. pylori, and that's when I was having all of the stomach acid issues and just pain, like right-sided pain and stuff like that. They did do a biopsy, but it came back negative. They're like, oh, you don't have H. pylori. When in fact I did. And the issue with those biopsies and H. pylori is H. pylori actually burrows into the stomach wall. And it's not detectable sometimes if you just take a tiny little tissue sample. You may not actually, you're getting just the very outside of the stomach lining, and they burrow back behind it because they don't like.
I don't want anything to burrow inside my gut.
And right, they don't like the stomach acid.
Yeah, I don't like that word.
Right?
So again, remembering
That's
like they're alive, like it's a
very much
thing.
alive.
Yeah.
They don't like that acidic stomach acid, so they hide in the stomach wall and they create what's called urease.
This is gross. I'm sorry. I don't like this.
I know. It's the truth, though. I'm not making this up.
Oh,
they create different toxins to alter the stomach acid so that they can basically come back out and live there.
Get it out.
Wreak havoc. Yep.
That's amazing.
And the crazy thing is that it's so transmissible. It's transmissible through saliva. That's the main, if you share drinks with people, if you kiss on the mouth, if you basically, so your husband and your whole family, if you have it, basically everybody has H. pylori. It's very common among family units.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's nasty. It's destructive. And it takes years sometimes for people to even start to have symptoms. When it's at really low levels, and most of these bacteria and things, when they're at really low levels, a lot of times the person's asymptomatic. There's no issues that they know of, right? But there's something brewing beneath the surface that eventually will come out and eventually will be this big fireball of symptoms for them.
Okay, let's talk about that, Christy. Sorry, Angela.
Yeah. Okay, I want to say we're going to say the same thing. Go.
This to me is kind of getting at the core of it, even in our discussion, because I came to you just after our conversation. I was like, I want to know. I'm just curious.
I did it first.
Wasn't having symptoms. And I know, like, Christy has basically since treated everybody in my circle. Okay. And a lot of them weren't having quote unquote symptoms. The problem is 10 years down the road. So I was kind of trying to draw it out for Stuart, and I was saying, imagine you plant like sunflowers in your garden, right? Like over time, the birds spread those seeds. And in 10 years, if you don't do anything about them, you will only have a garden of sunflowers. Yeah. And so at first, it might start out as just this like super small amount, an unnoticeable amount, and then all of a sudden, it's completely taken over everything 5 or 10 or 15 years down the road. So some people might be listening to this and thinking, well, I don't really have any symptoms. It kind of doesn't matter. You still need to know, because all of these things are living and they all grow. Mm-hmm. So in a year, they're not going to be in the same amount. In 6 months, they're not going to be in the same amount.
Yeah.
And so you're genuinely, I think with the GI map, you're investing in your future health. Even, I know people have immediate symptoms that they want dealt with sometimes, but sometimes it's you just saying, you know what, in 10 years, I want to be healthy. I want to be have vibrant health. What's the best way I can invest in that now?
Yeah.
And I kind of can't think of a better way other than maybe working out, than doing a GI map.
Well, we do things, or we're encouraged to, like the colonoscopy range, right? Like there are things that we're told you need to do no matter what, asymptomatic, whatever. Like this should be the top. Yeah, I was trying to convince my mom the other day. She's like, but I don't have any symptoms. And I'm just sitting there like, but something has to be wrong with you. You can't just get off scot-free. But it is so interesting. I mean, like when I got mine, I'm like blowing up Shay's phone. I'm like, you got to do this. You got to see this. This is crazy. But like I didn't have like intestinal symptoms or anything like that. But you said something and I took a note, and this is going to be a future episode, but you said something about like adjusting habits to walking towards health. And I just loved that. So we're definitely going to circle back around to that. So people get the test and like, there's major things like H. pylori, there's parasites. We did have a request from someone to talk about parasites, but are there any other like really doozy bad bacteria that we would want to know about just going into this, especially for those like that are walking around without symptoms? Like,
Yes, absolutely. There's, so I started with H. pylori because that's the one that lives in the upper stomach, right? It kind of sets the tone for the whole gut.
Okay.
And then as far as bad bacteria goes, there's a lot of different types of we call them opportunistic bacteria, because under normal circumstances, when the immune system is nice and healthy, everything, you have great levels of all the good bacteria or the probiotics that make up your immune system. When you have good, healthy levels of those, and when your stomach acid is not compromised by H. pylori, which causes decreased pancreatic function, and then eventually your gallbladder ends up putzing out, right? These bad bacteria are kept in check. And we actually shouldn't see them at all. We might see them in low levels in a lot of people, but those good bacteria and that good acidic stomach acid is keeping them in check. And when that stomach acid pH changes, and when so the stomach acid not only keeps the the bad bacteria in check, it also keeps the good bacteria in. This is something not a lot of people consider, but the good bacteria have to be kept in check. In excess amounts, the good bacteria, the ones that make up your immune system, when they're overgrown and if they're in excessive amounts, they become pathogenic or bad bacteria. They can produce toxins themselves when there's just way too many of them doing their thing, right? So we have that very essential acidic stomach acid, that good pH that we have to maintain to keep the good and the bad ones in check. So the whole gut is about balance, right? We don't want anything to be too high or too low. We want everything to be nice and balanced. It's a good, it's a beautiful system when it works perfectly, right? And when there's good balance there. So the bad bacteria, we call them opportunistic because they see, they're introduced to our bodies through the food we eat, through the air, through the surfaces we touch, and then we touch our mouths, through kissing other people, literally just everyday life. All the things we do every single day, we don't even realize we're just consuming a ton of bacteria. Okay, that's kind of gross to think about, but it's true. And when these microbes will come in, and if they see a compromised immune system, they see low stomach acid, they see an environment that they can actually thrive in. And so they actually take up residence. They actually start to live and colonize and grow in the small intestine and large intestine. And then, of course, when we're talking about H. pylori, that's living in the stomach. They take up residence and they will begin to overgrow. They'll begin to thrive. And if you have, last episode we talked about, why is America's gut so bad? We were talking about the food, right? We were talking about the processed foods and the sugar and all these things that contribute directly to feeding those bad bacteria. Sugar is the number one thing that these bad bacteria like to consume. That is what's keeping them there and keeping them thriving is the processed sugar, is the all the you talked about the hidden sugars last time, right? There's all these ways, these master marketing ways that are duping people into thinking there's not any sugar in what I'm eating when they're really it's full of it, right?
Yeah.
We even have to consider carbohydrates and things like that too. Certain carbohydrates, especially the processed ones that aren't from whole grains and things like that, our bodies turn them into sugar, and then that becomes food for the bad bacteria. So sugar is really terrible. But the bad bacteria, like I said, they see that opportunity, that weakened immune system, or that lowered stomach acid, or whatever the situation happens to be, and they just start to take over. And like Shay said, this doesn't happen quickly, right? This is something that happens over time. It happens over years for people. And the breakdown is very unnoticeable for a long time, right? These people that IgI map are carrying strep and staph and other types of, another one called Morganella, Pseudomonas. We look for so many different types. And these people are carrying these around and they're colonizing and they're growing. And under stressful times, they actually accelerate growth because our good bacteria are severely, they're harmed basically by stress. So the bad guys overgrow during times of stress, and the good guys will kind of die back a little bit during times of stress. And so that balance is really thrown off when we're really stressed or really sick. And left untreated or if we don't pay attention to it, eventually these things become chronic disease, inflammation in the body. And that just is this huge, if we never actually get to the root of it and fix it from there.
This is crazy in our cooking community because we talk a lot about food, consuming food and health, etc. We've actually had a lot of conversations about parasite cleanses. And what I've learned is that people will often just do it like they would do a water cleanse. They're just like, well, this has to be good for me, so I'll just do this parasite cleanse. They're very involved to really do them, and they're very expensive. There's a lot of prepping your body through the process, prepping your body after the process. Without a GI map, you are literally shooting blindfolded. You're like, I don't know what parasites I have. I don't even know if I have any. I was half convinced to do one alongside some other women in my cooking community because I was like, well, that'd be good. I probably have a parasite. Let's just do it. And then the GI map was like, nah, you don't have any. I could have wasted all that energy and all that time dealing with something I didn't even have. And the things that I thought I wouldn't have to deal with, my GI map was like, oh no, this is actually a problem for you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's crazy how much information it gives you about actually dealing with the thing. And what blows my mind is that the supplementation that fixes the gut, all these issues you're talking about, it's actually not that complicated.
Yeah.
Or expensive. I mean, in terms of testing and treating, it's just knowing. You have to know.
Right. And when you have that knowledge base, you know how to make the right decisions to be able to fix the problem, right? But you have to know first. That's exactly exactly right. And I am not one to waste resources. I'm not one to waste time and waste money. And I did that. I will just tell you, that was my journey of getting to this point, getting to the GI map, is I wasted a ton of time and a ton of resources. And I was really truly suffering with the symptoms that I was having, and it was just really out of sheer not knowing. I didn't know this was an option, right? And until my friend Teresa, until we became friends and she introduced me to this, I had no idea this even existed. And so that's one thing that I'm really passionate about now, is just helping people to understand that there is this option of looking at exactly what's going on instead of just guessing. Like, I don't want to guess. I don't want to play around with it. Like, my wellness is one of the top priorities in my life, and I don't want to play around with it. I want to know exactly what's going on and start doing what we need to do to fix it right away.
But the option is, and I think a lot of people share that same sentiment. So they go to their doctor or whoever their provider is, and they're like, well, let's do a hormone panel. Let's do a blood panel. Let's see what's going on. That doesn't answer the questions.
No, it doesn't. Really, what it does is it will bring up more. So hormone dysregulation is a symptom of a root cause, right?
Yeah.
And the root cause for hormones is even in the gut. We can always trace it back to that.
Yeah.
Everything literally is traceable back to the gut. And so that's why I'm just like, let's not waste time. Let's not waste getting, all this labs and all this money and stuff. Like, let's get to the root and fix it from there. And then it's incredible what the body does. Like, I am a living, walking testimony, and I have so many clients that are too, of what the body can do as far as healing itself when we work from the inside out, when we work from the root cause up.
Yeah. And I will just say too, as a little testament, my mom did a GI map with Christy. Sorry, Mom, I'm disclosing this doesn't count for HIPAA, but she had H. pylori. Okay, that thing Christy was talking about, that upper GI thing. And she's been hospitalized at least once. I want to say twice, but at least once for gallbladder attack. And so, like, when you talk about these things being, I mean, I'm just trying to put it in context.
Yeah.
She had to stay overnight in the hospital for a gallbladder attack out of nowhere, didn't know why, was given no treatment other than like maybe cut back on fatty foods, maybe. They gave her no solution. And I'll tell you what, she could have done the GI map about 10 times over for the cost of that one night that gave her no answers, no health, and no promise of health in the future. So I think sometimes it's helpful to keep things like this in perspective when you talk about using the resources that you have to actually answer the questions.
Right. And I think that another bit of good news is the short-term aspect of it. So I'm on a regimen with Christy right now, and I came to her for hormonal issues, just being perimenopausal. I was like, how do I even, I'm sure something's going on here. I don't know what it is, highs, lows, I don't know, but how do I navigate this? And she's like, well, let's start here. And the plan is short term, or I'm assuming at least most of it. And I don't know, like Prilosec, is that a lifetime prescription? Are you too, you're kind of scared to go off that because nobody wants to wake up gagging in their mouth in the middle of the night, so like that's what's really exciting too. It's this navigation, it's this adjusting of habits with actual results. And
for the short term, like you said, it's none of this is meant to, functional medicine at its core, and the way that I approach it is this is not meant to keep patients for life like the conventional model of medicine is. This is meant to, I mean, if we wanted to keep patients for life, we would just continue to dance around symptoms, right? And we would just kind of treat treat symptoms and just, oh, let's hope that gets a little bit better. But that's not making someone truly well. That's making them a patient for life. And that's not what we want. That's not what you want, right?
Right.
That's
No.
as the patient, that's not what you want.
Right. Let's go back to parasites for a second because it was requested. So what are they? How are we getting them? What are some of the top symptoms?
Definitely. So just like some of the bacteria I was talking about, how we are introduced or how they are introduced to our body, the parasites are the same way. We will experience them in our food. We'll experience, undercooked meats is one of the main sources for parasites to enter our body. Undercooked pork, especially conventional raised pork. Undercooked.
Trichinosis with bears. Trichinosis.
Yeah,
If got any hunters
definitely.
here, it's a big one.
Yeah, and that's a no pun intended. It comes from bears. It's a bear of a parasite to get rid of.
I've watched too much Meat Eater. I'm like,
I know.
Everyone, make sure
right?
you cook your bear meat.
Like cook it till it's shoe leather. But yeah, the parasites are really easily introduced to our bodies. They happen to be on produce that is shipped from all over the US and all over the world. It happens to be in our water. If you have animals, a lot of times people are a lot more prone to getting parasites themselves just because they have animals, even just dogs in the house. But I would say, and I'm not a social media guru, but I'm on Instagram enough to see that there are some influencers and people that are making a huge deal about parasites. And they're basically convincing everyone that they have parasites. And a lot of people do. I will agree with that. A lot of people do. But I will tell you that and I do a lot of GI maps, and on the GI maps that I do, I will probably find someone 1 in 5, maybe 20%, 25% of the time who has actual parasites living in their gut. Now, I will also say on the heels of that, not all parasites stay in the gut. So some of them don't like the environment. So we have, even if your stomach acid is compromised from H. pylori, it's still a very acidic environment, and parasites don't like that a lot of times. So they will migrate to other tissues. They'll migrate to your muscle. They'll migrate to your fat, like the trichinosis and that you get from the bears. It lives in your muscles, and it causes severe muscle aches and pain for a long time. And there is a way to get rid of that eventually, but it's kind of a long haul marathon to get rid of it and to basically convince those parasites that your body is not their host, right? Your body is not the place they want to live. But I would say that majority of people who are thinking that they might have parasites, the majority of them, not all of them, but the majority are dealing with typically leaky gut and bacterial overgrowth. Okay, so small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And the more intense their symptoms are, typically the more species of bacteria or families of bacteria that we find. And there are certain types of bacteria that are specifically inflammatory. Specifically, we call them inflammatory and autoimmune related bacteria. And they're the ones that produce, we call them enterotoxins. So they're toxins that are released into the gut. These bacteria will produce lots of histamine. A lot of the times the issues that people are dealing with are coming from a high histamine in the body. And if histamine is a problem, if you're having, even just look up, what does high histamine look like in the body? And you'll find just this amazing amount of a laundry list of symptoms. And there's certain bacteria in the gut that produce histamine. Your body produces it normally just as an immune response, but your body won't overproduce it if there's not a root cause, if there's not a bacteria or multiple bacteria in your gut also producing histamine on top of what your body's producing. So some of these bacteria are very, very inflammatory, and some of them actually trigger autoimmune disease like rheumatoid arthritis and MS and things like that. So a lot of times we can directly link, like if someone comes to me with so much inflammation, a lot of joint inflammation, a lot of brain fog and stuff like that, I can usually, on their GI map, we can find that they have at least one of these inflammatory and autoimmune related bacteria on board that is overgrown, that is, contributing to that and is the actual root cause of that. So, but going back to parasites, the symptoms of having parasites can very much mimic small intestinal bacterial overgrowth as well. So parasites definitely are an issue for people, but I would say because of, especially in the US, because of our hygiene typically and our living conditions and things, we don't see parasites as much as we might in, other like underdeveloped countries and things like that. But then again, the GI map is not perfect and it's not going to detect parasites that are outside of the gut. So we're looking specifically inside of the gut. And we are also looking for DNA remnants of the parasites as well. So even if we don't find like actual parasites, and not all parasites are worms. A lot of people think that a parasite is like this long worm that's going to come out of me. And sometimes, right, there are parasites that are worms, and the GI map looks at that. But some of them are very small microbes like bacteria, and we look for the remnants of their DNA. So if they are in the gut in any capacity, even if they're not in that direct stool sample, we should find them based on the DNA remnant that we see.
Okay, so let's take a quick break here and say thank you to our sponsors. And since we're just talking about worms coming out of your body, let's talk about sexy.
What sort of a segue is that? I'm sure advertisers are so grateful.
Really sexy right now. Let's talk about sexy and simple.
Oh my gosh.
And luxurious skincare. That's right, ladies. We're talking about Toups & Co. If you think that natural skincare has to come at the cost of results, then you need to visit toupsandco.com and you need to give their skincare a try using code HMC10 for 10% off. So here's a little backstory. Emily began this family-run company because her daughter had skin issues, all kinds of autoimmune issues. And so she was like, I can't give her something with fragrance. I can't give her something with preservatives. Her skin is going to react. It's going to cause problems. And she couldn't really find it on the market. I know now we're inundated with all this natural skincare and makeup and so that was not the case. Okay. That is a new thing. You could only get stuff from your health food store and it all smelled like patchouli. So Emily created something better, okay? She uses ingredients like cold-pressed olive oil, organic grass-fed tallow, and formulates her skincare with real ingredients without the use of anything synthetic. No chemicals, no toxins, no fillers, no artificial colors, no artificial fragrances. All their products are made in the USA, and they're all made with sustainable and fair trade ingredients, and most importantly, transparent and ethical. So you can go to toupsandco.com and you can pull up any of their products and she will proudly display those ingredients to you. And if you think, okay, great, it's clean, but it's not going to work, then I want you to go and read the reviews beneath that product and you will see very honest takes from people about, yes, it does work. So your skincare and your makeup can all be shopped at toupsandco.com. Even things like dry shampoo and face soap and tallow bombs for your body. Use the body oil. This is what I use instead of toxic lotion. Lotion is so toxic. I use the tallow bomb on my knees and on my elbows and on my chest. And then I just get all sleek and sexy, not thinking about parasites by rubbing this body oil all over me. The almond one is so beautiful. Okay, luminizers, bronzers, face creams, foundations, mascaras. You can shop it all at toupsandco.com. Use the code HMC10 for 10% off.
All right.
Let's see you beat that segue, Angela.
Okay, then when you're all parasite free and lubed up, you're going to slide in to your American Blossom linen sheets. What's that?
I think that's the first time lubed up has ever been said on this podcast.
You need to make a note right now and use this code SummerChic20 for 20% off of these beautiful, beautiful linens. So fall is coming. We're looking at like getting ready for school. We're making adjustments around the house, getting back into our routine. We're going to tidy up our linen closet with beautiful new crib sheets and herringbone cotton blankets and linen sheets for our beds that have an extra large fitted sheet so it's not constantly slipping off. The queen size and the king size come with extra pillowcases. These sheets have been made, these linens have been made in the United States, from the growing of the cotton into the box, the beautiful box that's packaged by someone very special at the company, even with a little note inside that arrives at your door. You can use the code SummerChic20 for 20% off. American Blossom is the domestic side, but this company's been making 5-star quality linens for 125 years. So you can trust them. They have a 2-year happiness guarantee, which I think is so wonderful. And they've been with the show since day one. So AmericanBlossomLinens.com, SummerChic20 for 20% off. Okay, so I said that I came to Christy because of just assuming there was some hormone action going on because things were changing. I don't have a really bad, I can't even think of any like perimenopausal symptoms that I have. I feel great, but I was gaining weight. That was freaking me out. Okay. So we talked about, excuse me, these symptoms like 10 and 20 years finally catching up with you. And my question is, when we're looking at perimenopause and this typical weight gain that women go through, are we possibly looking at this is when these particular symptoms typically catch up with women?
Good question.
Because how can it just be that like across the board we're just gaining weight? Like, I mean, I'm just wondering if this is like a collision. Like here we are. We're all kind of, it's all happening at the same time because maybe this particular symptom reveals itself at this time.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a crossroads in a woman's life and in their health that there's definitely some of the biggest changes happening to the body, just like there is when we start to go through puberty. Huge changes are beginning to happen in the body, right? So perimenopause and menopause itself is basically the opposite of what is happening in puberty, right? So in puberty, we're seeing a huge surge of estrogen.
Right.
We're starting to see progesterone in the body as well. And we're starting to see the development of those sex organs in the female. And we all know that brings a lot of symptoms along with it, right?
Strife.
Yeah, exactly. And then in menopause, we see basically the exact opposite beginning to happen, where you're starting to see a decline in estrogen in the body. You're seeing the youthful estrogen decline. Okay, there's actually different types of estrogen.
Okay.
But we're seeing the youthful estrogen begin to decline. The kind that we have that basically put us through puberty and sustained our childbearing years and things like that. But the woman's body transitions over to a different kind of estrogen. They all have, there's like 3 or 4 of them. They all have different names. Our bodies transition over to a different type of estrogen when we start to go through the year, really probably the couple of years leading up to menopause. And then after menopause, it transitions to a different kind of estrogen. And anytime we see the body, the hormones changing, right? These are just happening on our natural time, our body's natural time clock, right? So anytime we see a shift in hormones, whether it's naturally a natural shift or whether it's a synthetically induced shift, like if someone is on bioidentical hormones or birth control or something like that, we will also see the landscape of the gut change. And there's a direct relationship between the bacteria in the gut and the hormones in the body. And if one of them changes, the other one's also going to change at the same time. And so it's very complex to really break it down and to be super specific about it. But that kind of gives you like a general overview of, are they related? How are they related? Yes, they absolutely are. And the gut bacteria, they influence so many things, pretty much everything in every body system. The gut bacteria have a huge say in what happens. And hormone-wise, to just look at hormones and say, you have these abnormalities, you have these things going on, and then supplementing those hormones just because they're low without asking the question, why are they low? Right? Some practitioners do. And I used to work for an endocrinologist. I hope you can't hear my dogs barking. I used to work for an endocrinologist before I came home, and he was actually really good about asking why, right? He wanted to know, well, why are you a 30-year-old man with testosterone that looks like an 80-year-old man? Like, we're not just going to give you testosterone. We're going to look for a deeper root cause. And so a lot of times we would look for a pituitary tumor, or we would look for underdeveloped testicles or something like that. He was really good about asking why, but only to a certain place, right? Nobody really in conventional medicine that I've dealt with, and I know there are practitioners out there who do, but a lot of times they don't ask why on a deep enough level to say, well, where is this inflammation? If you have a pituitary tumor, where is this inflammation coming from to begin with? If you have hormone dysregulation, where is this inflammation coming from to begin with? And the like I said, it's kind of a crossroads there for women around that menopausal age, where there's just this huge shift in hormone activity, a huge decline really is what we begin to see. And it's not immediate. Like I said, it starts to happen as you're approaching menopause, and then it really starts to take a dip after your cycles stop. But you do still have levels of estrogen that your body is producing, that your ovaries are producing. That's a different kind of estrogen. It's just not the youthful, beautiful estrogen that we're used to, right? But when there's an imbalance in the gut of bad bacteria, when there's an overgrowth of bad bacteria, like I said earlier, they produce toxins. And those toxins, a lot of times, especially in women who have the MTHFR gene and have problems detoxifying. Yeah, it's a lot of us, honestly. It's probably 60% of people, if not more, especially women specifically. We have a problem with methylation. We have a problem with detoxifying. And when those bad bacteria are producing their own toxins, and we're using toxins on our skin, and we're consuming toxins in our food, and they're not just toxins, they're estrogen mimicking toxins. They're playing like they're real estrogen, and our bodies don't really have a way to distinguish between fake estrogen and real estrogen. And so they bind to our estrogen receptor sites on our cells, and our cells don't get the benefit of that estrogen. And so basically they just become, those toxins just become just recirculating toxins in our body. And that's what contributes to hormone abnormalities. That's what contributes to brain fog, and just this whole headaches, this whole cascade of symptoms that people tend to have. And that can even be true on into menopause as well. If there's bad bacteria at play that's producing all of those toxins, and you're going into menopause already, your symptoms are going to be greatly exaggerated. Same thing with a young girl who's just starting to go through puberty. If she consumes a lot of sugar and a lot of conventional dairy and has had antibiotics in her life, and her gut is not a good foundation, all of a sudden this surge of estrogen coming in is going to just, it's just going to exemplify all of these symptoms. And she's going to have painful periods, and she's going to, have mood swings like crazy. And so if we can deal with the bad bacteria, fix those, heal up the leaky gut, and have a clean diet and a good, can't say stress-free lifestyle, right? Because we all have stress every day. But if we can learn to manage that stress well, and to release that stress from our body, and to let our nervous systems recover, then we don't have debilitating periods. We don't have really exaggerated menopause symptoms. And, we're going to experience certain things, but none of these body changes should be completely life-altering, right? Ideally, we should be able to kind of flow in and out of these seasons in a way that is natural and is enjoyable. Like, can I say that?
Okay, yeah.
You can. And I think it's just like so much part of our culture. It's like the hot mess syndrome, the glorification of the hot mess syndrome. Obviously I'm on Instagram, so I got a lot of menopause stuff showing up, like it can hear me talk, right? Yeah. And like, it's a glorification of the symptoms. It's a celebration. Like, hey, we're all a mess together. I'm like, no,
but Angela, you've also lamented the fact that like there's not really been great resources, great conversations, great thing about menopause. And, you know, and other than like the Instagram hot mess sort of a thing. And it makes me wonder, is that because people didn't, you know, I don't know. I don't know the answer to this question.
It's under
people have the
researched.
gut?
I mean-
did people have the gut issues that we have now as prevalently in the past? Or is this kind of a byproduct of our modern lives, our
Did
modern
Ma Ingalls have
conveniences?
hot flashes? Is that what we're saying?
Well, I'm just saying, yeah, maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe that's why there's not a lot of resources written on it, because it just was kind of a thing that happened and it wasn't maybe such a big deal. If you had debilitating periods, because, you know, I've lived a very unhealthy lifestyle before, and my periods would put me out. I mean, so bad. And I always thought that's what periods were.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I started to understand, no, your lifestyle actually plays a significant role in how you experience periods. If the same can be true for menopause, are we experiencing it way harsher than we need to because we're not going into it well?
Yes. Yep. That's exactly.
I know it makes total sense with periods. Like, I have context for understanding that. Never thought about that with menopause until this moment, Christy.
Okay, so then when are our children getting this test?
I'm making all mine take GI Ultramax. I'm like, look, this is a broad spectrum. Everything
It's
in here will
incredible.
benefit, will you? And here's what's crazy too. I want to go back to your question. Sorry, Angela,
Yeah,
to
it's okay.
override. But
Yep.
one of the products Christy has this on, I think we talked about this last week, is this powder. You just take it. It's broad spectrum. It covers a lot of different things. It has a lot of different ingredients. I've patched these things together over the years, from psoriasis symptoms to some gut distress to concentration things or emotional things or hormone things, or and it's like I've got a tea cabinet full of like slippery elm bark and marshmallow root and nettle, and I'm supplementing every day with NAS and resveratrol and things I can't even, PEA and all these sorts of things. And like, lo and behold, the reason we're taking all of these things is the gut. Is just the gut. So it was like this lifetime of just supplementation.
Right. And searching.
And
A lot of
searching.
And
I had to search all of that out myself. And I was really proud, because once I got to it, I was like, yes, this makes me feel a lot better. Now, the GI Ultramax, that powder, it has NAS in it. It has all the mushroom extracts that I was taking. It has slippery elm and marshmallow and all these wonderful amino acids and fatty chain things and all kinds of stuff going on. But like, the NAS I was taking for detoxing, because my body doesn't detox the way it should. My cells don't turn over the way it should. So even things like sauna and red light, you're trying to encourage your body to like wake up, turn things over, get rid of them.
You know, Shay, remember how you've always complained like your skin doesn't even turn over like it
My
should?
skin doesn't turn over. My skin, I could put sandpaper on my skin, man. It doesn't do anything. Yeah.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah. So Angela, you asked about kids.
Yeah.
When do our kids get this? I'm actually, I map, you know, I have moms and dads come to me about their kids, and we can absolutely map kids as well. I have a 8-month-old that I'm doing right now, because he has just severe eczema all over his face and all over his body. And mom has tried everything and she can't figure it out. And so I, you know, just to be able to know that really anything that manifests on the skin like that's chronic, that won't go away, that isn't just like, you know, the regular chicken pox or the, you know, impetigo or something like that, that's acute. Something that's more chronic like that is always, we can always draw it back to a gut root cause. So I've, you know, 8 months old, you know, little bitty babies all the way up to teenagers. I mean, everyone we can find something root cause wise for everybody.
How does an 8-month-old baby, Christy, get to the point where that already is manifesting in such an excessive way?
Yeah, it's hard to rationalize, honestly, especially if you're the mom who has done nothing but nurse your baby. And maybe introduce this mom said that she had given him just like a little bit of applesauce or whatever. But if the child is showing these types of leaky gut type symptoms, which is what eczema is, then I told her, I said, it's probably, honestly, you're dealing with something yourself first. So we're going to map her as well and see what she has got going on. Because we're, through the breast milk, we're passing our own probiotics and all of these things that we have in our body to our baby, immunoglobulins and things. And if mom doesn't have enough of a mucosal layer to harbor those good immunoglobulins, if she doesn't have enough of the good bacteria herself, then her breast milk's not going to have that for her baby as well. So, and then, we think about, heavy metals might be something that might be a factor for that little guy, that might be actually an issue for the mom. And so we have to, again, when you have a baby who's nursing and who's brand new, he wasn't a C-section, he didn't have any vaccinations, he, should be like this picture of health, right? So we're going to dig a little deeper and dig past him and his little body, and we're going to look at mom, and we're going to see, we're going to look at both of them, but we're going to, look at her root causes and see what's going on there and start to fix both of them. So,
I mean, if you like strep B, how they want to put you on. Do they still put you on penicillin for strep B when you're pregnant? I didn't do that. I used garlic.
Only if you let them.
I didn't let them. I was like, I'll handle it. Thanks. But would that be passed on to the baby? Would that be the equivalent of them having an antibiotic?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. There's good vaginal flora that we want to be passed on to the baby that if they're born naturally is, and that's part of their initial immune system. They're basically born without an immune system, and the initial, passage through the birth canal is inoculating them with those good bacteria. Also, when the colostrum comes in for the mom and the milk starts to come in, that's just a huge dose of immunoglobulins and probiotics that initially populate the gut. And actually on the GI map, we can see there are specific types of good bacteria and those levels that we look at that are directly from the breast milk or directly from the mom. That should be there as foundational bacteria, like Bacteroides fragilis is one of them. And Rosaburia is another one that are from the mom. And if a baby is exclusively formula fed from the very beginning, a lot of times they're missing out. They're missing out on a lot of those good foundational bacteria. And even if they're not formula fed, there's other factors at play. And I even talked to her yesterday about like toxins in her home. And she lives a pretty clean lifestyle, but I just tried to help her understand that there could be some other factors at play outside of you and outside of the baby's body that are, impacting his gut and causing him to have these issues. So that's where the lifestyle habits come into play. That's where evaluating your toxins in your home and things like that, your products in your home, that's where all of it, you really have to take all of it into consideration. And it can be very overwhelming when you look at this and you think like, oh my gosh, I'm doing everything wrong. And I have all of these things. And it's really just more of a slow walk through, a slow walk through this lifestyle. I don't ever ask people to just, totally ditch their old lifestyle and then adopt a new one. It's a slow kind of habit stacking. I like to call it habit stacking, right? So, but yeah, that's what that would look like for an infant, and kids can absolutely benefit from it. They just adjust the lab ranges a little bit on, like if they know it's an infant or if it's a child or something, the lab ranges are different. They base it on the birth date.
And it's interesting having my mom and I both having done this now. She was low in particular things because you asked me, were you breastfed? Which I was, but I was lacking some things that you would think you would have great amounts of if you were breastfed. My mom was almost exactly the same as I was on those things. She literally didn't have it to give me. So I've never had it.
Yep.
Isn't that wild?
That's interesting. My mom was not breastfed. So
So tell her to get the GI map.
I did. She's, we'll see. I'm going to work on her.
Yeah. Does mold affect your gut?
In a big way.
It does.
Yes.
It does.
And how much mold?
How does it get in there?
Like,
yeah. How much mold?
I mean,
It just
like
depends. Everybody is so different.
different.
If the detox issues with MTHFR are on board, it could be just a very small amount of mold exposure, because mold has many toxins that come along with it, but it directly gets in the gut and is very toxic for that environment. But it's also a neurotoxin too, so it creates an environment of nervous system dysregulation where you're just in fight or flight basically all the time, and that kind of stress on your body will drive down your good bacteria. And so all of a sudden you have an immune deficiency. And it's this big cycle of issues with mold. And I just met with an 18-year-old yesterday, who was exposed to, I met with her yesterday. She was exposed to mold her freshman year of college, and she didn't have a choice. Like, she had to live in this place, and she's just having horrendous anxiety, horrendous nervous system dysregulation, and all kinds of things now. And her hair's falling out, and she's having lots of fatigue. And the number one thing is obviously to get out of the mold. Like, there's no gut work that you can do that's going to heal you of mold exposure if you're still in the mold, right? So that is number one.
Can
first
you
and foremost.
can you
that's
define
scary.
exposed though? One
Mhm.
day, one
Yeah.
DIY project, months,
So when you have prolonged exposure, like she lived in it for like a year while she was at college, right? So prolonged daily exposure is going to just continue to build up in your body, in a really harmful way, and those symptoms eventually will be super severe. But somebody who's, maybe mold is a little high in the environment for the day or something, they're going to have some respiratory symptoms. Maybe they're going to have, especially if leaky gut is involved. Leaky gut is really where we're seeing allergens pass from the gut into the bloodstream, and then the body is mounting an immune response on those. And so someone who has leaky gut is going to have exaggerated allergies, like really, really bad, right? Until we patch that up, until we heal the gut up, and then the allergies, I mean, you're still going to sneeze or whatever, but the leaky gut is a huge part of those allergens passing into the bloodstream and then causing a lot of inflammation from there. So just, being exposed to mold out in the environment, or maybe even in a building that you're in or something, if it's just an acute exposure and it's not something that's chronic and happening all the time, then your body should be able to deal with that, even just on a small exposure scale, right? But if it's prolonged, that's when it becomes an issue. If it's a prolonged exposure over the weeks or over the months, or over the years, even, people are exposed to mold, that we really start to see a huge buildup of toxins. We start to see the nervous system they develop autoimmune disease is what they do. And it's because the nervous system's in constant fight or flight. There's all these circulating toxins, and it's kind of a recipe for disaster, to be honest. And that's where I was. That was something that I dealt with as well. So getting rid of the exposure is number one. And then definitely there's a ton of gut work to do on someone who's had mold exposure. There's multiple things at play at that point.
Okay, let me ask you this. I mean, we're closing in on our third hour on gut health, and I feel like you could just have a gut health podcast, let's be honest. But
all right, that may be on the horizon.
There you go, Christy. This is your life's calling. Please do it for the rest of us so we can sit and listen to it.
Okay.
Let's say somebody can't, for whatever reason, get a GI map currently, but they want to do what they can. And I feel like you've touched on some of those things, managing stress, being as much as you can in a clean environment, being aware of some of these outside toxins, the foods you eat, the water you drink. Okay, so those things aside, are there particular supplements, probiotics, prebiotics that you just are like, you know what, I don't fully know what's going on, but just take these in the meanwhile?
Yeah.
What would those be for people?
Really, really one of the most, like, if someone is really, really on, has to be very budget conscious and really doesn't have the money to spend on a whole lot. Honestly, bone broth is one of the best things that you can consume, like homemade bone broth, right? And that's because when we break down bones and we break down cartilage, we're breaking the bones down into collagen. We're breaking them down into those amino acids that Shay talked about that she's taking in that powder. It's literally the building blocks of our gut lining. So when we're drinking bone broth and things like that, we're drinking literally what's able to repair that gut lining. The only problem with just doing that is that if there's parasites, if there's overgrowth of bacteria and all of that, you can only heal your gut so far. You can only heal that lining so far, because the bacteria that are overgrown are an obstacle for that healing, right? They're causing inflammation in the gut. They're tearing down the gut. They're causing destruction. So definitely to do what you can with the bone broth, or if you want to, you can buy L-glutamine, and you want to make sure it's from a reputable source and that it's good and all of that, a high quality supplement. But L-glutamine is one of the major building blocks of the gut lining, again, to help heal up leaky gut. So that would be the first thing that I would recommend for someone. And typically when someone's having leaky gut symptoms, or really gut symptoms at all, I think we talked about it in the last podcast, there's only one cell layer thick in the gut, right? Before you enter into the bloodstream, which is where we don't want any of the gut contents to go. And so there's probably going to be some kind of gut barrier issue, or we call it gut integrity issue for most people. And it doesn't mean everybody has leaky gut, but it means probably everybody, especially in America, if you're living the, standard American lifestyle, even if you're not, right? Even if you're living Shay's lifestyle and Angela's lifestyle, a lot of times leaky gut or a barrier integrity issue is going to be a problem. So one of the best things you can do, like I said, is either L-glutamine or to consume bone broth. And I would recommend making it yourself, cooking the bones in the Instapot for at least 90 minutes. If you can do it if you don't have an Instapot, you want to do it on the stove, then let them cook all day long, right? Just let them cook down all day long. So that's one of the things. Okay. That's one of the very first things. Colostrum is the other thing. Colostrum is very soothing. It soothes inflammation. It helps to kind of quiet down a lot of the things that are going on in the gut. So if you can get a hold of fresh raw colostrum, is the absolute best. That's the best case scenario. And I recommend drinking at least a half a cup a day, half a cup in the morning. If you can do twice a day, get your hands on a bunch of it, that would be fabulous. You can get, there's a lot of colostrum out there that is, marketed from a lot of companies and things like that. And I'm kind of leery about some of it, to be honest, because there's like colostrum gummies and things like that. And sometimes there's hidden sugars in those, and it's been really processed and really broken down. So be leery of any colostrum or any supplements that have been really processed to get the end result that is enjoyable for the person to eat or drink, right? So just like food, just like we approach food, approach these supplements and nutritionally approach them from the standpoint of, I want to find what is least processed, what is most like it is found naturally, right? Either from the animal or from the earth. And that's
you got to be skeptical, folks. Be super
do.
skeptical.
And that's a good principle to live by and to consume by, honestly, looking for things that we're putting in our bodies that are least have been touched by the least amount of human hands possible. Right. So colostrum and L-glutamine. And then one of the other things that I absolutely love, especially for immune function, that relates to the immune system in the gut, is zinc carnosine. Zinc carnosine is fabulous. It will help, it'll help boost that immune system and boost those immunoglobulins in that mucus layer. In a really, really positive, helpful way. So I would start there. And some of the other things that we use to kill off bad bacteria, because like I said, you can only heal your gut so far before you really have to deal with the bad bacteria. Berberine is one of the things that we use in our kill protocols. Berberine is fabulous.
Kill protocol. You sound like a spy.
So that's one thing that we use. But that's something that really needs to be followed and monitored by a practitioner who knows what they're doing. Some people can tolerate berberine and other people can't. And sometimes, depending on what a person's immune system's like, you don't want to start killing off bad bacteria first before you heal up the gut a little bit. You boost that immune system. Mm-hmm. And before you open up detox pathways too. That's a really big issue, because I tell people all the time, those bad bacteria are producing toxins just living and thriving in your gut. But when you go try to disrupt them and kill them off, they get really mad and they start to just spew toxins all over the place. And that will turn into what we call Herxheimer reactions, where people have detox or die-off reactions. And that's very uncomfortable. And
oh my goodness.
I know.
So just email Christy. I mean, listen, whatever you got to do.
Yeah.
Whatever you got to do. Okay. Find a way to, if you have the means and you're asymptomatic, great. Still go do the work. If you're struggling, reach out to Christy. Her information's below the podcast, so you can email her directly. You can also follow her on Instagram, where she shares a lot of helpful information. And Christy, you will have to come back on and talk about
habit stacking.
What was it? Stacking habits. Habit stacking.
Yeah,
Angela's so good at writing notes.
I love habit development, so I'm all about it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And to be fair, we're not talking about a $1,300 test, you guys. Okay?
Oh,
so
no.
just
not at all.
We don't mean to be scaring you off with however we're wording this.
It's
not like
very,
that.
Yeah, it's very within reach for most people.
Yeah.
And even if you have to stretch it out over a couple of months or something like that, they allow you to do that as well.
Cool.
The lab.
Oh, that's cool. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This was fantastic.
Bye.
I'm going to send this episode to my mom.
Like...
Sorry, Mom. Sorry, not sorry.
You both brought your moms into this one, didn't you?
Yeah, right.
My moms, my sisters, my friends. I got all kinds of people. Okay, what's the gut lady's name?
My family's
what's
will you please stop talking about your intestines? Please, just stop. No, we're going to pick that up again.
So good. Okay.
Like next season or something. Well, we're definitely... Christy's our functional nurse consultant in residence.
There you go.
I like it.
Right.
I'm here for all of it.
I like how we don't really give our guests. Now you shall be a part of this.
Right.
See you Friday. All right, ladies. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back here with you on Monday. Cheers.
Cheers.